So welcome friends to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and meditation practice. I hope you all were able to receive the newsletter, mailing that I sent out with the topic of this week's discussion. So this week's discussion is a very well-known description of the five aggregates that the Buddha described, the five aggregates. It's found in the Visuddhimagga and some other places. So I think you all know what the five aggregates are, of course. Those are all the aspects, elements of our body and mind and the world, actually. That means all the sensory objects, the external world, when you look around and you see everything, including your own body, and feeling your own body, but all the other people's bodies, animals' bodies, trees, basically anything belonging to the material world is called the aggregate of form. Now, but it's basically anything that's comprised of the four elements. And then feelings are the pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings that we experience in our mind. And the feelings are actually the first first experience that we have when we have a sensory contact. Feeling arises, coming through all of the six senses, the five physical senses, including the mind as the sixth sense. Everything we experience has a pleasant feeling, painful feeling, or a neutral feeling. But usually it's the painful and pleasant ones that grab our mind the strongest, and which we create most of our karma about. And then the perceptions. Based on the feelings we perceive, that means the mind creates a mental picture and a memory out of these basic, these vibrations. And the material forms actually are really just vibrations that are coming through our nervous system. But because of memory and language and conditioning, when we perceive them, they appear to be some kind of a solid object. And then we react to that object, the sankharas. That means we react to them with like, dislike, and the whole range of mental thoughts, including emotions. Emotions are included within sankhara. And all of our karma basically is created within that sankhara element. Sankharas are the results of our past karmic actions, as well as just all sorts of habits and so on. Just reaching up to scratch an itch is a sankhara. It's a kaya sankhara. We have sankharas of speech, the way we talk, and sankharas of action. And then the consciousness, and that's basically the knowing faculty. But for anybody who's not an arahant, it means the ego consciousness. I am experiencing something, outside of myself, or it's a subject-object duality, dualistic consciousness. For the most part, it's the easiest way to understand. So anyway, these are the five aggregates, and our whole life basically is comprised of them. So the Buddha has made this analogy of these five aggregates, and he says material form is like a lump of froth. So, this lump of froth means the froth that you see at the edge of lakes or rivers. It looks like, foam. Usually it's due to a lot of pollution that's there in the water. Highly polluted places have more of this foam on it. in the Buddha's day, the rivers and so on, or lakes, because people wash their clothes in the lakes and there's so many other things. So the Buddha gave this analogy, and he said, if a man with clear sight, he would take a stick and he would think that there's some, like a styrofoam, let's say a solid object floating on the river. He would see this foam, and he would go and mistake it for being something solid. And he would go there and with a stick, he'd poke at it and it would kind of just all dissipate. It was kind of, not solid. So that's the analogy that he gave for material form is like a lump of froth, because basically all material forms are cellular vibrations. That means all material forms is made up of cells, molecules, atoms, and atoms are made up of electrons, which are just electricity. So in that sense, all material forms in its deepest breakdown are just condensed energy. That's why it appears to be solid, but it has its deeper essence as like a lump of froth. So that can only be understood by very, very, very deep, insights in meditation. Now, the feelings he equated to water bubbles. So like water bubbles that come up from the bottom of a lake, or if you have an aquarium at home, the pump is pumping and you see water bubbles come up. But when you're looking at the bubble come up, let's say you have an aquarium and you see all these bubbles, but then when they get to the surface, what happened? They burst. And so they don't have any essence either. So the feelings well up in us, and then they burst on the surface with either a painful or pleasant feeling, but their nature is just like a water bubble. They come up, burst, and vanish. And then the perceptions are like a mirage. So you all know what a mirage is. You look out in the desert and then you see something that looks like a water in the distance, but as you walk toward the water, you never get to it. So in the same way, our perceptions, the perception again is how the mind creates out of just vibrations. It creates an individualized sort of image. Like, for example, now you are watching this screen, you might be seeing this face, but in reality, any doctor will tell you that what is coming to your eye is just some color in different proportions, color and shape in a different proportions, but that's all. But because of memory, you are seeing that and you're saying, oh, that is Bhante Rahula, for example. And then you're hearing the voice, and the voice also is different than Bhante G's voice or your wife's or husband's voice or anybody. So you remember that. And so every time you hear an object again, the perception has that quality of recreating the name or label. Even if your eyes are closed and you hear this voice, you're recognizing it as somebody's voice. Because that's due to memory, and it's due to the habits that are created through language. Like you hear a dog barking or a cat meowing, so you know the difference between a dog barking and a cat meowing. That's because of perception. And then the reaction, the sankharas, are equated as being like a banana tree trunk. That means coreless, like a banana tree trunk. Now, if you ever know what a banana tree is, or if you ever peel off the layers of a banana tree, then you'll see you keep peeling away the layers of a banana tree, and there's no solid core. You could say the same, maybe like even for an onion or some other things. But anyway, so our sankharas also, they're just habit patterns, and the way we react to them, like you get an itch and you immediately want to go scratch something, or you hear a sound, what's that? This is sankhara. And they're just simply habit patterns that are deeply ingrained in the nervous system, and even our emotions. So you see something you like, you get joy, or you see something else, you get this maybe fear. See a snake, you get a fear. Now, of course, the illusion, the perception is, the snake is a perception that arises in the mind, but the fear is a reaction to the perception. And then the consciousness is like a magician's trick. That means the ego consciousness. It means the sense of ourself, because we've already studied, about the self so many times in previous talks and so on. The consciousness, when it arises, this magical illusion of an I or a me that's hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking, arises with that, with a sense that, I am doing that. So that, of course, is created within the mind. So the consciousness, each moment of consciousness is producing this magical illusion, and the consciousness is holding all of these other aggregates together. And the form, the feeling, the perception, and the volition are all objects of the consciousness. So anyway, it's a very complex process, the mind, and many of you have been practicing meditation. Meditation is the only way that one can really, decipher that. But really, understanding the five aggregates is one of the main contemplations in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Dhammanupassana. The second category of Dhammanupassana is contemplating the five aggregates, because understanding the five aggregates as this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, this is really the main Buddhist teaching. If you read the sutras, you will hear that refrain in so many hundreds of suttas. The person is to regard all these five aggregates as this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, because that's the way that we relate to these aggregates, especially the one of consciousness. But we look at our body in the mirror, we say, this body is mine, this is myself, this is mine, or whatever we have. So anyway, so now, just having said that, I want to, that's what our basis of our questions on tonight were. But before we get to the questions, there was a couple of questions sent in by email that may not relate exactly to these five aggregate analogies. One of them does, but so I'm just going to answer these first, and then go on to see if there's any other questions in the chat box. Okay, so this one question coming from email is, I would like to know about the relationship between stream entry and attaining the jhanas. How are they related? Well, I'm pretty sure that most of you listening in on this program now probably know, at least intellectually, what the jhanas are and what the stream entry is. So the relationship between attaining the jhanas and stream entry. Now, attaining the jhanas is part of the right concentration. It's considered to be the attainment of tranquility and concentration. So there are 4 of those jhanas. First jhana, second, third, fourth jhana. Now, how are they related to stream entry? Now, there is some controversy amongst different scholars, as well as perhaps some meditation masters, about whether attaining jhana is absolutely necessary for attaining stream entry. Now, stream entry is the first stage of enlightenment, and in that stream entry experience, it's a person's first full, deep glimpse of the unconditioned state. That means of no self, of impermanence, and it understands impermanence and no self, the emptiness of consciousness, and in a very direct experience, not intellectual. You experience a radical transformation of the mind, even if it's just momentary, and you'd never forget that experience. So it helps you to overcome. It destroys wrong views, and especially the belief in a self, and it overcomes your doubts about it, and it overcomes any attachment to rites and rituals. So the stream entry experience is considered to be the first stage of enlightenment. So how are these related? Is that now the practice of combining jhanas and attaining stream entry is best illustrated in the 7 factors of enlightenment. So the 7 factors of enlightenment are a very important one of the Dhamma teachings of the Buddha. In fact, they're also the 5th category of Dhammanupassana, contemplating 7 factors of enlightenment. And that comes just before attaining the stream. So now, again, a lot of people practice attaining jhana just through a concentration object and gaining one-pointed concentration without necessarily going on to develop insight. So just attaining the jhanas by itself does not mean somebody is going to attain stream entry. They have to use that concentration and tranquility developed through the jhana and then cultivate insight into impermanence, suffering, and no self. But some people don't go on to do that. They get stuck in the tranquility and of the jhana, and they, kind of, that's enough for me. And then they come out of the jhana and they have not destroyed any of the fetters. And it doesn't necessarily produce any profound insight, especially into impermanence and no self and suffering. So in the 7 factors of enlightenment is different. It starts with mindfulness, and you start cultivating mindfulness according to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. As you are doing that, you investigate the Dhamma, and you're investigating the 5 aggregates in terms of them being impermanent and suffering if you cling to them with, selfish attachment, and that contemplating them as they're not really mine or myself. There's no, there's the consciousness is just a sort of an illusion. So that is following the 7 factors of enlightenment, you investigate the Dhamma, and this is where you are practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness and Dhammanupassana specifically. So, by developing investigation of Dhamma, you get a lot of energy to practice because you're starting to see all kinds of insights. That's why it's called insight meditation. You're getting insights as you're investigating the Dhamma and seeing impermanence and no self. So you get a lot of energy. It's like a scientist, observing an experiment and seeing new things at every turn and so on, like turning up the power of a microscope from 10 to 20 to 50 to 100 to 200 to 500. Finally, you get an atom smasher, electron microscope. So you get a lot of energy because you're seeing a lot of new things, and that gives him joy. Because he really, he's getting close to the truth. So he's joy. That's the 4th factor of enlightenment. And then this tranquilizes the body and mind, this joy. And then the concentration is achieved. So the concentration is the 6th factor of enlightenment. The concentration is achieved, the jhana is achieved through that practice. That means the practice of mindfulness. And because of that, you attain equanimity. And equanimity is one of the factors of the jhana. That's why we can see that relationship, why equanimity is considered the 7th factor of enlightenment, and it follows the concentration because you need that concentration to experience this equanimity, which means the mind is not reacting to any stimulations. And if you're able to hold that long enough, the next stage is stream entry. And so without that, following this method, people might argue about it, but if you just follow these 7 factors of enlightenment, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, this is the Buddha's method for attaining enlightenment. And it's very clear if you just study and going through it step by step, you see how it's a very developed, step-by-step progress of developing these factors. So that is the relationship between attaining the jhanas and stream entry. Now you can attain the jhanas and not attain stream entry, but you can attain stream entry without reaching at least the 1st jhana. But you reach it through the practice of mindfulness, not by doing some separate special concentration technique. You do it by following the 7 factors of enlightenment, which starts with mindfulness and investigation of Dhamma. So, okay. Now, the second question that was proposed, this also refers to these this analogy of the 5 aggregates, or at least part of it. So, in some other sutras, the Buddha also recognizes this. It gives a simile of the body as being fragile like a clay pot. The question is, when the body breaks up after death, what happens to the space within the vessel? So within the body, there's something called the space element. But that space element is, well, the Buddha gives examples of the space element. Now, within your mouth, you can run your tongue around in the mouth. That's because there's space in the mouth. And there's space in the nostrils too. That means, and if you're sitting in your house right now, you got a lot of pictures on a wall, you got furniture, but there's space in there too. As we say, you got the room, the room is mostly space, but it's got some things in it. So that's how you define, that's how the mind can help define things is through this space element. It's not the same space element as when I've oftentimes is in consciousness. When the consciousness gets very calm, and when the sense of I starts to fade away, oftentimes I say, try to feel that space of awareness. So awareness is sort of, I like to see awareness as being different than the dualistic ego consciousness. So normally we're seeing everything in terms of I am looking and doing all these things. But in meditation, that starts to, as you gain concentration and mindfulness, that sense of I, that I'm doing it, little by little gets less. And so there's more, what I call space in the mind. That means you can start to feel a lot of things because the mind is not burdened by thoughts. Our thoughts are which eliminate the space because we're focused on an object, that itch, that person's talking, the person's talking. That contracts our mind. But when the mind is relaxed from all those reactive processes, then you'd be surprised. You can feel and hear so many things going on almost at the same time. You feel many sensations in the body. You can hear many different sounds on the right, the left, behind, and you can even notice thoughts going through your mind because, the mind has become like the sky almost. So that's what I, just call the space of awareness, because there's space now in the awareness. There's not much space in the consciousness because it's full of me and I and emotions and so on. So that blocks out the space. So this space element and that space element in the body are two different things. This would be so the space element in the body vanishes when the body dies, as I mentioned. All the four elements go back to nature. The bones and flesh, they disintegrate go back to the earth element. Any water, urine, blood, all that goes back to the water element. The air that was going in and out of the body and in other places in the body, that also goes back to the air. And the space becomes part of the sky again, no longer contained within the cavity of your mouth or in any other part of the body. So that space element goes back to the space. It has nothing to do with our consciousness. Anyway, I hope that sufficiently maybe answers your questions. Now let's look at the chat box and see if there's some questions in there. This question: what differentiates feeling from the sankharas? You mentioned our patterns of emotion when talking about sankharas. That made me want. Emotions are not feelings. This is something that gets confused a lot because you don't understand the Pali words, and sometimes the translations, feelings. When we talk about feelings in English, then I'm feeling sad, right? Or I'm feeling happy. But those are emotions, not feelings. The feeling is simply the pleasant or painful quality of any particular experience. Like when you feel sad, it's kind of painful. But the pain is just, the feeling is just the pain itself, where the sadness is the emotion. So that is the difference. And so all of the emotions, jealousy, envy, they're connected with pleasure or pain in one way, but again, they have different functions to them. It may be a little bit difficult to understand, but as you observe it, more and more, you may be able to understand that. So, yeah. All sankharas have feeling because every sense experience has all five normally of these aggregates, unless you're, of course, in a jhana or some other thing like that, but in our ordinary kind of consciousness. And each one has a different, they're all connected. It's like a soup. Let's say you have a soup and it's got 5 spices in it. And if you're familiar with spices, you might detect, oh, there's onion in this soup, or there's salt in the soup, there's pepper in the soup, there's chili powder in the soup, there's curry powder in the soup. If you're a chef and you'd be able to detect it, right? But you can't separate them. When it actually goes on your tongue, you can't separate those, but you can notice the function. So the same way, in each of our sense experiences, there's the earth element. There's the material form is, like you're looking at this screen. Now you see this thing that looks like a head there. So that's a vibration. It's just a color vibration. And because you recognize, because I don't know if you like me or not, but let's say, seeing that particular form might give you a pleasant feeling, or it might give you an unpleasant feeling, or maybe a neutral feeling. But then you're perceiving it also, you recognize, that is so-and-so. And then you have a reaction to that, either whatever, some thoughts, just some maybe aversion or liking, and then there's a sense of that object being separate from you and you are experiencing that. So that is how those aggregates kind of function together. You can't really separate them. They're all there in that sense experience. But, when you observe it enough, and especially when you develop mindfulness and you follow sort of the Buddha's guidance on how to develop these insights, then you will start to understand that. The whole point of it is to give you insights. And the whole point of getting insights is to hopefully let go of the ignorance and the attachment to those things that causes us to keep repeating our habits, and especially the negative habits that bring results, painful results. So all these teachings have to be seen within that light, not as some other kind of philosophical or kind of ultimate truth. The whole Buddhist teaching is aimed at trying to understand the nature of suffering and how our mind has got caught up in that whole ball of suffering, the inner tangle and the outer tangle, because of ignorance, not understanding the nature of the mind. Okay, this question is: material form itself just another mental phenomenon, or is it something other than that? No, the vibrations, you could say, are real, but the perception that's created from the vibrations, like that color you're seeing on your screen, different colors in a particular, that is something that's coming to your eye, but you don't see that vibration. Oh, okay, here's a good analogy. Let's say you got a TV station, you're watching a TV station. And a TV station is broadcasting a show, but you don't see those colors and people flying through the air from the TV station into your TV set. Now we're talking about the old-fashioned kind of TV. So, but those vibrations, because they go through capacitors and diode, whatever is in that TV set, and the image is produced. Now you're perceiving that image. That's a perception. That's the perception. And it appears to be real. And you see it as an object in a form, but its reality is just these energy waves. Again, it's very difficult to understand, but you can only understand it through very, very deep meditation. When you actually, you'll have an experience of that, where your body is here and all of a sudden it'll feel like it's just disappeared. The sensations are there, but there's no solidity to it. There's no definite form to it, but it's there because you're still sitting there. If you open your eyes, oh, the body's still here. But in your mind, it's disappeared. Or it doesn't appear anything like what you are doing when you open your eyes. So it's the material form itself is the form, but the perception belongs to the mental formation. So the mental phenomena, the vibrations, material vibrations of the world, all the atoms and molecules that are zipping through the universe, those don't depend on our mind. But our mind, then they strike our senses, and then our mind creates these ideas of the individual objects. That's why the Dhamma is very profound. It's not easy. That's why you can't understand it without meditating, because it's virtually impossible. Okay. In the flag behind you, I see 5 different colors. Are these in any way related to the 5 aggregates? What do these colors represent? They are not related to the 5 aggregates as such, but it's a visible object that you're seeing, so it is a form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness within your mind. But these colors represent, according to the tradition, the aura emanated from the Buddha's body when he attained enlightenment. And it said that these colors went up to the highest Deva realms and so on. So again, it may be hard to understand that, but anyway, whatever it is, it's a symbolic. Now, nowadays there are some other groups that use these colored flags, and I hope people don't get them confused. I think I sent out on this newsletter. How many saw that Buddhist flag I sent out on the mailing a couple of days ago? So I mentioned that's our Buddhist flag. And Mita, our cat, was looking at it. But I hope some other people don't get some wrong ideas thinking it's some other kind of flag. But, that would be their perception. Okay, so that looks like that's the end of those questions. So does anybody have any last little question they might want to ask by raising your hand? I don't see any yellow hands out there. So again, I would encourage you to, in your meditations, if you're practicing the Vipassana system of meditation, because that's really where you will start, where the 5 aggregates plays the dominant focus of Vipassana meditation. I mean, the 4 foundations of mindfulness itself is about the first foundation of mindfulness of the body. So that's part of belongs to the first aggregate. Then the second foundation of mindfulness is the second aggregate of feelings. And then the mind states, these are the states of mind, which would include the sankharas and so on. So, that's why the four foundations of mindfulness is really focused on understanding these five aggregates. But unfortunately, a lot of people in their practice, they don't practice enough, or they don't develop that the concentration needed. I would say you need concentration to attain stream entry. And if you don't think you do that, you're probably not going to attain stream entry. But anyway, that's another story, another debate. Okay, friends, so if there's no other questions, then let's take a few minutes break and come back and then do some yoga exercises and then see if we can experience some of these aggregates. Okay? Okay. See you back in a few minutes.